Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this special live episode of the Suburban Women Problem. I'm Rachel Vinman.
I'm Jasmine Clark.
And I'm Jo Carducci.
So, this is a different format for us. We don't usually do live episodes, but obviously, our country is going through something that's never happened before, also. So, it seems to be appropriate. I know a lot of our listeners and people in our community have questions right now about what exactly is happening with Trump's indictment and what we can expect going forward. So I'm glad we're having this chance to talk it through. And just a small programming note, I am in South Florida where we do have basically a thunderstorm every afternoon, and we are having a pretty wicked one right now. So if you hear thunder, it's just God celebrating that Donald Trump was indicted.
I love it.
It's a lot to unpack. Like there's so many emotions really at the moment that all kind of coexist. Because there's joy and rejoicing and there's accountability feels really good. But at the end of the day, what I think all of us and everything a lot of Americans probably feel right now is sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think that, this is finally happening. And I think for as long and for as many things that Trump seems to be doing, and he's always felt above the law, I felt like when this day finally happened, I would just be really excited to finally see like some accountability and just like justice prevailing, and maybe just a tiny hint of a realization that nobody is above the law. However, maybe it's just because, as you can tell, I'm losing my voice. So, I'm feeling a little under the weather, but maybe it's also because at the same time, this happened. And it's not a good thing that happened. It's a good thing that there's justice finally being served in some small way. Of course, this is the very, very early stages of that justice being served. But the reason why we're here today is not a good one. It's not really one to rejoice about. So I'm kind of in this weird place of like, I'm happy it's finally happening. Ooh, but also I'm sad that it has to happen because it's not good for our country.
I completely agree. What do you think, Jo?
Yeah, I mean, look, what we're talking about here, and one of the first thoughts I had after I saw, Trump has been arrested was I went back in time, to the day after the election in 2016. And I remember, it's very clear to me that I was trying to figure out how I was going to talk to my kids who were young at the time, 7 and 4. And I was trying to navigate how I was going to explain to them that what I told them the day before about how right prevailing and how, good triumphs over evil, how all of those things would be what they would wake up to in the morning, didn't happen. And all I could think about was, how do I explain that to them, right? So what we teach our kids as moms is that there is accountability for your actions. And what we saw with Donald Trump was the opposite. So this like fundamental core of what it means to be a parent and what we're supposed to be teaching our children, this person who stomped all over that was rewarded with one of the highest offices, arguably the highest office in all the world. And so when you fast forward through everything we've been through since that day until this one, and you think about what we've been able to survive, but we got here, it feels like we've tumbled and stumbled and fallen and tripped into this place. But like,
fortunately, he kept doing things wrong. So we were able to it wasn't like maybe there were some things that he will never be held accountable for.
Right.
But he never, ever learned his lesson, maybe because he wasn't held accountable as long. I think it's very relatable. And then he just kept doing things wrong. And eventually he got caught. I mean, it's that this is the thing after he left office that he is being held accountable for in federal court is just, it's really amazing to me. I mean, I don't want to completely just talk about the parenting aspect of it, but I mean, it does. To me, it just really resonates that, doesn't it, with you guys? I mean, absolutely. Maybe you didn't get caught and maybe you think that you're going to be okay, but if you keep doing things wrong, this is the path that you're on. You will, and I mean, it's like, it's also his reputation. Like, no one was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because he had never done the right thing. And we'd seen him,
Right.
the way he talked about people, the way he talked about himself, and basically he was above the law, the way he talked about his opponents, his political enemies. Just, I don't think this is because of that, but it is all a picture of who Donald Trump is. And there we have it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that Donald Trump has gone through his entire life pretty much not ever having to face consequences. I think lately this year, 2023, he's probably faced the most consequences he's ever had to face. I mean, whether that's back in New York when he was conning people out of their money, like, building things that he never actually paid for, or doing all these different things, whether it's the E. Jean Carroll stuff, other things that we don't even know about. He's never really had to face consequences. And now I think when a person, let's stick with the parenting thing. If a child constantly does bad things and never faces consequences, they do not ever see a reason to not continue to do bad things. Like, why would I stop? Nothing is going to happen to me. And I think there are people in this country that truly believe that there is enough money and power to not have to face consequences. And they truly do believe that there are some people that are above the law. And they are those people because they are the ones who create the systems that allow them to be above the law. Yeah. And so, this is a kid who probably has never been punished a day in his life, now well into his 70s, finding out what it's like to actually face consequences to your actions. And that's what's happening today. That's what's been happening this year. And I'm here for it. I feel like you're never too old to learn. You can teach an old dog new tricks. I think he's learning one today.
Well, that, and he's always managed to have people to take the fall for him. Yeah, we've seen this time after time after time. And it's, what Rick Wilson says about everything Trump touches dies. You bought the ticket, you get to ride the ride. We've seen this with people like Michael Cohen, for instance, who Trump was very careful in kind of, I don't want to give him credit for much, but having people who would insulate him from accountability. And as we've seen, as he gets older and more emboldened and like really more consumed, I think, by his narcissism, because I think something we don't talk about enough in conjunction with particularly this case, because to Rachel's point, this is stuff he did when he was out of office. They kind of like, how they keep moving the line and then they get sloppy. And so he was losing a lot of these people who could have taken the fall for him. And he was also getting more emboldened, sloppier, more desperate. And like a lot of these documents that he had, some of the things that we know in the transcripts he was saying about why he had them was driven by his need to vindicate himself. In the case of the attack on Iran, look, I'm not supposed to have this. This is super, super secret. But right here it says I was right, but I'm not supposed to have this. And he gets sloppy because, and there's no one else. There's no one around. He's
there's just no one around to hold him accountable. I think that's a good point that he did get sloppy. I'm glad that, this is not just a message for the citizens of the United States. It's a message to the world to say, we're still going to have these processes, and we are still, And I mean, look, there's, my Twitter name is not Tech Hobbyist for a reason. I am not a national security expert, but it doesn't take an expert to kind of understand that actually my husband, who is the national security expert, was like, how are they even going to have this trial? You cannot show these documents to the jury. And it will be difficult. And I think it is difficult for regular citizen like Rachel Vindman to understand the seriousness of these documents, the seriousness of the crime. Although, I have seen some polling, even 45% of people polled in Oklahoma think that he is guilty. So that is encouraging news. I still, I think that a lot of people can understand. Now, what does this mean? What happens? What happens with his candidacy and the Republican primary for 2024? All this, there's a lot of questions here, and maybe we are going to get an unintended result. But I think it's worth it if, that it is worth it to have justice served. But, I do want to get to like just discussing some of the issues that have been like kind of personally confusing for me. Like, what about this MAGA judge? And then she didn't preside over the trial today. It was a magistrate. And that I think is a little confusing. Can either of you explain that a little bit about who she is and how she got assigned the case?
Well, it was a random draw.
Mm-hmm. But not really random. I mean, when I read about it, but I mean, it was like sort of random, but not like a lottery. There were only like 5 people, and some people couldn't be chosen because they had too many cases. And, I mean, like, you're busy at work.
I'm sure she wanted
my name off the list. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think she wanted it too.
I'm sure she wanted it, yeah.
Yeah, but then she didn't get to preside today.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, there is absolutely no mistaking the fact that she's a Trump loyalist. Mm-hmm. But what we saw with her, I don't know how to mishandling of the documents case in the past, the 11th Circuit, as my friend George Conway put it, bench slapped her and said, no, you can't do that.
You can't do that, right?
And so we're looking at one of 2 options essentially here. Well, 3. Mm-hmm. I mean, a myriad, really. Either she recuses herself because she knows, like, I am not the person for this case. Or
I don't see that happening, though.
I
no,
don't
but
either.
you wonder if she's going to be like, everything Trump touches dies. Maybe I don't want to be part of this. Like, I mean, Amy Coney Barrett kind of surprised us a little bit of like, really want to get off this crazy train now that I have this job and like this lifetime appointment. I don't know if this person will. She does seem to be like a little bit more of a true believer, but and it poses a problem. I think that's something that we talk about. Again, I talk about this all the time on the podcast and in any of the interview that I do of why it's so important that we educate ourselves with the facts, that we find reliable sources and just learn about it and know what's going on, so that when we hear people out in the wild, discussing these things and they say something that's, not appropriate, that, or misinformation, that we can correct them and go back to that. So, so she could recuse herself. Right. And then the other options are,
well, she might actually have been, and I hate to use this word because it reminds you of Susan Collins. She may have been chastened by the 11th Circuit, basically, bench slapping her. She may find that as a motivation to correct the record on her judicial career, maybe. Or she may decide that she wants to slow this trial down. She wants to gum up the work. She wants to interfere. And if she does that, there are options that the Department of Justice has to go to the 11th Circuit and say, look, this is a track record now. Here she is doing this again. This is in the public interest that we reassign this case. I mean, at the end of the day, the 11th Circuit has also put themselves on record as saying that they're not just going to let any random judge in Florida be like, no, this is all up to me.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I mean, those are some of the things that could play out here. We have to wait and see. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I think overall, I think having her there does maybe induce a little bit of anxiety for some people just based on her track record. However, I do think that we are seeing this happen for a reason. And I don't think that it's going to be all in vain. And so, maybe she does try to delay the inevitable. But I think eventually this trial is going to happen. For example, today, Trump did enter his plea. According to reporters, he did not actually say any words himself. His lawyer did all the talking for him, but he did enter his plea. But the co-defendant, who I think was like his aide, or I can't remember exactly.
He was a member of the military, and then he retired, and then he was hired by Trump, and he works for him now personally in a personal capacity.
So he did not enter his plea. And a lot of that had to do with one of the issues that Donald Trump was facing coming into today. And that was that the person working for Trump, the co-defendant, could not find local counsel. So apparently Trump did, because he's here and he's, did enter in his plea, but the other guy has not. So that's going to slow some things down for that guy. But as far as Trump, he did enter his plea. And I did find it interesting, you guys, and I don't know how y'all feel about this. I found it interesting that they put like no restrictions on him. No travel restrictions, didn't have to surrender his passport. But
that's like the only rule.
Yeah, he can't talk to his co-defendants, and they're going to come up with a list of people that he can't talk to that are witnesses, that he can't like interfere or have conversations with them. The issue being like, this guy is like going around the country, quote, running for president. Cute. Running for president. And a lot of these people that are going to be witnesses are also people that are just in his circle that he would probably be talking to anyway. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that even works or how that plays out. But I found that, a special counsel, Jack Smith, was in the courtroom today as well, and he agreed with this. So I guess, they don't see him as a flight risk. So I guess that's one good thing.
Well, he does have 24-hour Secret Service protection as a former president of the United States. Yeah. So I guess they're hoping that provides him some protection. I'm a little concerned about just my expectations of a timeline and the actual DOJ timeline. Are probably going to vary quite a bit. And then we have other court cases, possibly with Georgia.
Yep. Georgia's still pending.
Yes.
And that's supposed to happen in August.
Right. In July or August, right? January 6th is still out there.
Yeah. Yep. So, but do you guys, what do you think about this? I mean, we know that he was today, I guess, when he was arraigned or however that works, they did let him know that he has the right to remain silent. Do you think he has the ability to remain silent?
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
No, I don't think he does either. And I wonder how that's going to affect him when he campaigns, because he literally has no ability to not say things. Look, I'm like, Jo, you were just saying, like, E. Jean Carroll, she's going to sue him for more damages because he keeps talking about it and he won't shut up. And so he keeps slandering her. I mean,
he can't help himself. Please. He is an injured narcissist at this moment, right?
Yeah.
That is
a wounded bear who's lashing out. But really, how do you, like, with the campaign, with the timeline, do you think this gives DeSantis an advantage, assuming that DeSantis is like the second most, I don't know, but the polling doesn't really show. I mean, it's just there's like a bunch of other people like all in like mixed in together, but like they're indistinguishable polling wise.
I think the part that I don't like about this, I'm glad that it's happening, but it happening in the middle of campaign season means all of this is going to turn very political and campaigning. And every single thing that happens is going to turn into a fundraising email. And to be clear, a PAC is paying his legal fees. So
he can't or won't.
Yeah. And so we're at this
even
point
with
now,
that, he can't get attorneys.
This is going to turn into a circus, and that's the part I don't like, because I don't want the trial to be affected in that way. But as far as Trump exercising his right to remain silent, he absolutely will not. He will probably say things on the campaign trail to incriminate himself, to make it easy. But then I wonder if a lawyer doesn't go back and try to make it, massage that into something that can't be used. I'm very concerned about those types of things. But what I will say is ultimately, I think that if Trump is good at anything, he's good at sticking his foot in his mouth. And so I definitely see that happening. I can, I'm willing to put money down on that at least one of these campaign stops, rallies, whatever, he's going to say something that his lawyers are all going to be slapping their foreheads and being like, what are you doing? Shut up.
That's starts at about 5 a.m. and ends at 4:59 the next day. I just, it's just a constant thing, but the credibility and integrity of our election process and the primary process, I'm afraid, is going to be questioned by his supporters. And I mean, there's no way around that, but it's not a reason not to do this. But it is going to happen. Don't you think, Jo?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, Trump's going to Trump. And I've said this before, and I'll say this again. With the base, he could go on live TV and club a litter of baby seals to death while bad-mouthing Betty White at the same time, and have a scrolling bar at the bottom for donations, and they would send him their last dime.
Yeah.
I think that's just, look, we've seen it. Up is down, left is right, inside is out. The truth doesn't matter. And we're never, I hate to say that we're never going to reach them, but it's just Trump is going to Trump, and you can't stop him, and you can't change whether or not people are willing to accept reality and the truth or not. But what you can do, and what we see Jack Smith, who says clearly when he outlined the indictment, we have one set of laws in this country and they apply to everyone. So what the Department of Justice has to do, what President Biden has to do, is they have to keep going. President Biden has to stay out of this. He cannot dip his toes in these waters. And that is going to be incredibly challenging as we approach the 2024 election. If Donald Trump, even if he isn't, this is still going to be an issue that Biden has to keep navigating the way he's navigating it, just stay above and beyond it. And Jack Smith and the Department of Justice have to stick to the letter of the law, because at the end of the day, right. And that's the difference here, right? That's what either Donald J. Trump is above the law or he is not. Either we are a nation of laws or we are not. And with all of noise, there's going to be political considerations. It's impossible to avoid it when you're talking about a former president who stole our national security secrets and did God knows what with them, and is now the current front runner for the same office he just plotted a coup to steal.
Right.
I mean, there's going to be political considerations here, but you've got to stay with justice. You have to follow the law, and that's the way to carve through all of the noise.
Yeah, I just can't believe like he did this, and he he did it. He has no remorse about it. He honestly thinks that like he's done nothing wrong, because he just thinks that he can do whatever he wants. Like I truly believe that, but I also can't believe that there are still so many people willing to support him. I mean, you've got some of the presidential candidates on the GOP side saying, hey, we should pledge to pardon him if he's convicted. Like,
they're just so scared. I think most of them don't even believe this. They're just so scared that they would lose support. And it is, beyond pathetic. But you know what I don't understand? Like, to that point, Jasmine, is like, one of the things that, I don't know, it just blows my mind is Donald Trump is the poster child for a spoiled, rich, entitled kid who never, like you said, never had consequences because of his wealth, his parents' status, and their money. And then, like, okay, so that's the way it is, right? But then to have that, and like this group of people who champion him and really believe that he cares about them and that he is representing them and fighting for them, it's really like the greatest con of all time. I mean, and so there's no, right. You don't get it. There's no reasoning. There's no rationale with most people, I mean, like we could use all the like coherent arguments, but the most important thing we can do is just to, arm ourselves with the truth, and then make sure that we're out there fighting for the good candidates that we're talking about. Look, I mean, something that's not getting much news today, inflation is the lowest it's been in 2 years, but we can only talk about the former president.
See, if inflation was the highest it's been in 2 years, we might be talking about that, but we never talk about the good things. I think there are so many people that have like been waiting for this to happen so long that I do think there is a group of people out there that are like, it took this long and I'm still not convinced that this is real or that this is happening and accountability is happening. And so I do think that not just Donald Trump himself, but I do think that there are just some Americans that do believe that there are certain people that are above the law. Yeah. And I think that is why there's people that are like, oh, you should pardon him. Like all the pardon stuff is weird to me. Number one, he hasn't been convicted yet, but clearly you all think he's guilty. And so you're already ready.
That's really
We're already on the next step of like, he's been found guilty. Now what are we going to do? But also just like in general, I He's got his supporters, but then there's also people who they might not support Donald Trump, but they're still like, yeah, but I'm worried about like what this means for the future and other presidents. And I'm like, hey, I personally feel like if any other president is out there selling our national security secrets, they should also be going to trial and they should also be getting in trouble. Like, this isn't hard for me, but for some reason, for other people, they're like nervous about the idea of holding certain people who they consider too powerful to knock down, holding those people accountable. So I don't know how we get through that storm, but I do think that that's something to consider.
Something I say all the time, and I really believe this, to pick up on what you were just saying, is that not charging Donald Trump when we know the things he's done, the crimes he's committed, not charging Donald Trump would do far more damage to this country than indicting him ever could. Because, again, we go back to the rule of law. One of the fundamental principles, one of the bedrocks of this democracy is that there's one rule of law that governs everyone. And if we suddenly start deciding that one person is beyond the reach of the law and above the law, which, by the way, if you're paying attention, which we are, you'll notice that no Republican is out there, not from, well, I don't know about Green, but essentially they're not defending what he did.
Oh, no.
No one is defending it. Like you said, they pretty much know he's guilty. He's caught dead to rights. What they're doing instead is both saying there's a weaponization of government, there's a double standard. They're going back to Hillary. They're attacking Joe Biden for stuff that is baseless and not at all factual. Provable.
No, but they have tapes. They have tapes.
Right.
I mean, they're not going to listen. They're not going to play them, but they have 18 phone calls that were recorded. I mean, no one's going to hear them, but just trust us. They're there and they have them. Okay.
Right. We're going to trust the people who, by the way, say that Joe Biden actually lost the election and isn't the real president, and that's Jim Carrey in a mask. Those are the people we're supposed to be trusting about the 17 phone calls right now. But that's it. This is the whole ballgame. No one is saying he isn't guilty of what he did. It's whether or not you believe that we live in a country of laws or we don't. And if you abandon the idea that everyone is accountable to the same set of laws, then that is antithetical to everything it means to be an American. That's the whole ballgame.
Absolutely. Interestingly, to your point, Jo, there are a lot of people like, oh, well, what about what Hillary did? Or what about what Joe Biden did? And I'm like, you guys, like, these people, Hillary Clinton, I mean, if anyone was under a microscope, Hillary Clinton was under a microscope. Yeah. I mean, she just took it. She was not, unfortunately, she had to go through that abuse, but she went through it. And at the end of the day, they found nothing. All this stuff about Hunter Biden. It's like, y'all have been talking about Hunter Biden all this time. And then when y'all finally did a press conference, it was all like, allegedly,
we got
or
nothing.
Maybe, or we have evidence that maybe someone said something sometime that, it's like, y'all have nothing. And I'm like, if you believed with as much force as you talk about this crap that it actually happened, then much more would be happening. But it's a load of crap. You just need to deflect from the fact that your guy is a bad guy. He is the bad guy. And you're trying to find other bad guys so that we can look over there instead of looking at Donald Trump. No, Donald Trump is the bad guy. He is the villain in the story. And we're not going to find villains everywhere. I'm sorry, y'all. It's just not working.
No.
Well, but it's good. There's going to be a lot more of it. And I think we all need to be, at least gird your loins. It's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to deal with probably until the election.
And beyond, probably until this trial is over, and who knows what's going to happen after that.
A lot more questions are going to come up for sure. And something I just wanted to address real quickly, because look, we all know this doesn't usually come up at your kid's t-ball game or whatever, but every now and then you'll hear in passing, okay, yeah, but what he did was bad, but Biden did, but Pence did, right? And so Jen Psaki posted something that I found so fascinating today. And she's like, if somebody says that to you, essentially, just remember that Donald Trump is not being charged with the documents he sent back. Not a one of them. The difference here is that he's being charged with holding on to them, obstructing the investigation into them, lying about them, showing them off. Biden didn't do that. Hey, I have documents. Oh, crap. Please take them back. I messed up.
Yeah.
Prince had documents. Oh, mother, what are we going to do? Pack up all the boxes. Don't put my chaps in there because that would be embarrassing.
Exactly.
But Trump, he literally said, I have it here. I don't want anybody looking through my boxes. I really don't. Wouldn't it be better if we just told them we didn't have anything here? He said. That's the fundamental difference. And this is a question we're all going to have to navigate at a bar, at a game, around our friends.
No, and you're right. It's the important thing to say is they gave him many opportunities. He wanted his attorneys. This is part of why he can't get attorneys, guys, because he wants them to lie for him. And they're like, yeah, it's really not worth that. You not paying me, and then I'm going to lose my license and my way of life. Thanks. Right. Sounds like a great deal, but I'm just going to have to not take that deal. Right. Even the art of the deal, it's not such a good deal for anyone but Donald Trump. Right. I have not read the art of the deal, but I wonder if the only person that gets a good deal when dealing with him is himself. Right. And people are wising up to that. But I mean, truly, I'm just going to say it. Like, I'm not making fun of attorneys here, but I do live in South Florida now, and you can't swing a dead cat without seeing a sign for a realtor or an attorney. And there are a lot of attorneys here. So the fact that he cannot, I mean, most of them are personal injury attorneys, but the fact that he can't find anyone to represent him, nor can his co-defendant, especially like a national security expert, really speaks to who he is. And I think, again, you have to really look at the evidence. So this is not the world being against Donald Trump. This is really that he is not a good client. It's a really, uphill battle. And even with someone else willing to pay the bills, he does not, they just don't want to take on this headache. And, but we do really, you're so right, Jo. The point, whenever this comes up, we have to say to those people, so actually, here, I have this article right here. Let me send it to you. Or you can see it was that he lied, that he did not give the documents back when he was given many opportunities. So it is not about that they were stored in a bathroom. It is, but it isn't. But they could have been stored in a bathroom, and whenever they were alerted to that and sent them back, and probably nothing would have happened, even though it was very dangerous and it should have. But that's not where we were, where we are right now. And I think it is very important to be aware of what he was being charged with. But I do just want to advise everyone, or a hot tip, you need to go and look at some of the pictures for the people who did show up to protest today. There were fewer protesters, I think, than people would have expected, but there were enough protesters to have some really great photos. And I just want you all to give yourself that kind of joy on this. Like, it's a bit bittersweet. I mean, we're happy. We know it's a hard slog, and we're going to still fight this fight, but go ahead and enjoy those. Cause I think they're certainly worth your time. And I think maybe there are more flags than people, which tells you everything you need to know. Lots of giant Trump flags.
I mean, the flag to MAGA ratio was impressive, actually.
I mean, unfortunately, most of the people who might have been inclined to show up bearing arms either went to jail, are in jail, are facing jail.
It's also very hot and humid here. Yes, you're right. They did that once, and now, so we can say it doesn't matter and justice doesn't matter, but I do think that no one showed up in New York, and not many people showed up in Florida, even though there was a call for it. And I think that's a direct result of DOJ and their work on January 6th and saying, if you do this, we're going to find you. And this is illegal.
You will face consequences.
I mean, maybe this is a good data point. I still think we still just have to keep pushing. We have to keep, raising these issues. We have to keep letting everyone know what's going on, and we can't back down. But I mean, not only was Donald Trump arrested or arraigned rather, but also lowest inflation in 2 years, under Joe Biden. Let's talk about it. Is a good day. Let's talk about that. Well, thank you both for joining us for this live episode. It's always a little, harried when we do the live episodes, and I hope you feel better soon, Jasmine. But thank you for tuning in for our live episode. We'll be posting this on the Suburban Women Problem feed as a regular episode. And of course, we'll continue to talk about this on the pod in the weeks and months to come. Oh, yeah. We'll also have a regular episode this week coming out on Thursday, June 15th. So we'll see you then.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Yeah.